I'm Kat and welcome to my kitchen. This morning I'm going to be making apricot pecan bread. This is a recipe that I came up with several years ago. It took a lot of trial and error to veganize this favorite, but it's really good and it's super healthy. There's no sugar in it. Use maple syrup as a sweetener. It's got whole wheat flour and wheat bran. So I recently served this, for example, at a heart health seminar as something to show people how you can still eat some good treats and be healthy. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to get a cup and a half of dried apricots and you need to slice them in thin slices. And then you need to add a cup and a half of water in a small pan. You need to bring that to a boil, and you need to boil that for, once you bring it to a boil, then you reduce the heat to like a simmer, and you want to simmer it for about 10 minutes. Keep an eye on it though, because just depending, like today mine got done in about 8 minutes. So, and then you have a nice thick apricot mixture here to work with, and it's nice and moist, so you can see the thin strips of apricots that I sliced this morning. So that's what we start off with, and I'm going to put that in my electric mixer here. Actually, let me pull this out just so I have some more room. So I'm going to add that, and you also want to let the apricot mixture completely cool down before you add it. Now I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. Normally I use Earth Balance vegetable oil spread, which is a great vegetable oil butter substitute, but I didn't have enough of that today, so I'm going to just use canola oil. And normally what you do with the Earth Balance spread is that you let it soften and then you add it. So we're going to see what happens with the vegetable oil. I'm sure it will work just fine. And then I'm going to add maple syrup. This is 1 cup of organic pure maple syrup. Please do not use the Aunt Jemima's or something like that. Maple syrup is expensive, but it's totally worth it. The taste of pure maple syrup is a huge difference. So I'm going to put this in my electric mixer, and I'm just going to start to blend all of that together. Alright, so that's starting to come together. So now I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. I try to buy fair trade vanilla whenever possible. And then we also need to add, and I'm going to turn down the speed on this so I don't splatter, we also need to add 1/4 cup. Usually I use soy milk creamer in this recipe. However, I don't have any soy milk creamer today and I really wanted to make this bread. So I'm substituting it for coconut milk. And coconut milk is really rich. So it's very good for baking or making any kind of vegan cream sauces. So I'm going to add my coconut milk now. Great. And then I'm going to add a 1/2 teaspoon freshly grated orange rind. Self-explanatory, it is what it is. I just used a cheese grater on the smallest grates to grate that orange. And I'm going to turn that up a little bit. Great. So I'm going to grab the camera so you guys can see what this mixture is starting to look like, and then we're going to sift together the dry ingredients. Here is what our apricot, maple syrup, milk substitute, etc. mixture looks like. Sift together my dry ingredients. I have 1 cup wheat bran, and I have 1.5 cups whole wheat flour, organic whole wheat flour, and I have 1 teaspoon each of baking soda and baking powder. And then I'm just going to use this wire mesh strainer and I'm going to sift it together. Now I do have a traditional hand sifter that I use sometimes, but I have to say that I am all about trying to make cooking and baking and anything in the kitchen easier, and using a hand sifter is not easy. It is, however, a great workout for the forearms. But truly, I hate using it, so I either usually sift with a fork or do this. So that is a confession from Kat's Kitchen. They're all sifted together and I'm ready to add them to my wet ingredients. As you can see, I have changed the attachment on my mixer because I find this attachment to be better once you start mixing in dry ingredients. The whisk, I made the mistake of very early on in my baking career and in my stand-up mixer career to put way too many dry ingredients in when I was still using my whisk attachment, and I bent it. So I now use this when I am mixing in dry ingredients for baked goods. So I'm just going to pour about half of this in to start, and I spilled a little bit, which is bad. I'm very messy in the kitchen, so that's something I'm trying to work on because I'm trying to not be so wasteful. But a little mess isn't going to hurt. And it's not a big deal, it's like not that much. So I'm just going to start to mix this in. And it's starting to blend together really nicely, so I'm going to add the rest. And I'm going to be way more careful this time not to spill it everywhere. Martha Stewart would not approve of the wastefulness that I just displayed. Or the messiness for that matter. And I'm just going to mix this in a little bit here. And then I have 1 cup of chopped pecans that I'm going to put in once this is starting to come together a little bit more. Which is going to be like right now. So first thing I'm going to do though is scrape the sides of my mixing bowl with the spatula just to make sure we're getting all the goodies in and everything is combining evenly. And then I'm going to pour these in. And then just turn this back on. And it's pretty much ready to go. So one thing I like to do to try to save energy is I try to wait until I'm ready to put my ingredients in the proper baking pan before I preheat my oven. You'll notice that most recipes, they start always with preheat the oven to 350. Well, what if it takes you 40 minutes to get this all put together? Especially if you're not an experienced baker, it could take some time and there's chopping of some ingredients here and all that. To me, it just seems wasteful to have your oven on that whole time. It really doesn't take very long to preheat your oven to 350. So I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 right now. And then I'm going to get my loaf pans. I'm going to make this for kind of smaller breads because I have to deliver them to a couple of people. So I just thought maybe I'll make little ones. So I'm going to grease these lightly with some palm oil shortening, and then I'm going to fill them up. So while my oven's preheating, I will get that ready. So here's the dough. So my oven's preheating, and I'm just going to fill these a little bit over halfway. I'm just going to start by putting a scoop in each one. And I think I'll have enough. Put all the batter that's in here. I'm going to scrape this really good. Looks like this one's kind of low, so add that to here. And then I'm just going to kind of press down with my spatula and move the batter around so that it's even. And also we want it to look kind of pretty when it comes out, especially if we're taking it to people as gifts. Oh, see, my oven's ready. It doesn't take long at all. It was like perfect timing. I'm just done filling these. So there's a little tip for you. Here are my little breads ready to go in the oven. Okay, so I'm going to put these in. There we go, 1 hour. So my breads have been baking for about 40 minutes, and since they're in these smaller loaf pans, I want to just test them and see how they're coming along. So I'm going to get out my cake tester. I'm going to see if they're getting close to being done. Because they look like it. They're like a nice golden brown color. So I'm going to just poke the thickest one with the cake tester, and it came out clean, so they're done. So I'm gonna take these breads out, and I'm gonna set them on my cooling rack here. Turn off my oven, turn off my timer. And I'm gonna let them sit here for about 10 minutes before I attempt to take them out. Look at these beautiful little loaves of apricot pecan bread, fresh out of the oven, cooling on. It's cooled off a little bit. So I'm gonna try and get them out. I'm gonna just go along the edge. I don't like taking stuff out of the pan when it's still really hot, because I feel like you run the risk of having it fall apart. But I also don't want these to keep baking more, which they will do in these hot pans, because they're done. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully they won't fall apart. Okay. So I'm just gonna gently flip this over. Aha! And they fell out really easily. It pays to have good bakeware. Let me turn them over so the tops don't get marks on them. And we're just gonna leave them sit for a couple more minutes until they're ready to sample. And they're not too hot, but once we cut into them, they probably will be. So I'm gonna leave these sit for about 5 more minutes. And then I'm definitely gonna sample one because I'm hungry and I've been waiting for this. So it's still really warm, so it's gonna be delicious. And it's really moist. I'll bring over the camera so you guys can see the middle. Just gonna take a couple pieces here. I'm gonna put a tiny bit of Earth Balance spread on it. It doesn't need it, but since it's hot out of the oven and it's gonna melt, I think it'll be really delicious. Just a little extra. Very well worth the wait. This is delicious. I love the apricots with the orange zest and a little nutty flavor from the pecans. I definitely suggest trying this at home. It's a really nice bread to serve for brunch. So, I'm going to give you guys a little look at what the inside of the bread looks like here, cut up, and then we're going to sign on. So here is what the apricot bread looks like sliced. As you can see, it's really moist. And it'll keep like that for... Thanks so much for stopping by this baking edition of Kat's Kitchen. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you get out there and do some baking. Have a great day.